What's up, Endurifiers? This is Mario, and I'm back with another episode of Endurify. And today is a very special episode of Endurify, and that's because I'm going to be sharing my interview that I did last night with Bruce Beaunfrie, who is a 15-time Ironman finisher. He's also finished, I think, 10 half Ironmans. He's has done ultra marathons, is competing in a swim run. And I had a lot of fun just getting to know Bruce and interviewing him and really learning everything that he has, learned over the past, 15 years in competing in triathlons. And it's not just about triathlons because Bruce has a demanding job. He's got 2 kids, he's got a wife, and he, shared a lot of really good information with me about, specific swim advice, specific bike advice, running advice, nutrition, managing your time, remembering your why and being focused on your mindset and, translating your wins in triathlon into other areas of your life. And so, if you're somebody who's training for a half Ironman, somebody who's training for an Ironman, somebody who's, in the world of endurance or thinking about jumping into the world of endurance, then this is going to be a super valuable episode for you. Because imagine if you could, if you're trying to learn something, you're going to want to learn from somebody who has been doing it, has accomplished that result, and not just done it once or twice or 3 times, but 20 plus times. Bruce has managed his life, gone through training, and been successful on race day. And so really excited to share this episode with you. And without further ado, here's the interview. All right, cool. We're on. So Bruce, thank you so much for joining me today. Just to kind of get things kicked off, could you just tell me, a little bit about yourself, kind of where you live, what you do for a living, and we can go from there.
Sure. So I'm a program manager for a medical device company. It's a pretty demanding job, usually about 50 hours a week. Right now I live in Arizona. Before this, lived in San Diego. So my triathlon endeavors started in San Diego and then continued here. Have 2 kids, 14 and 20. When I started this, my daughter was 5. My son was 10. And my daughter did triathlon. My son did the occasional 5K. Cool. So quite the challenge balancing work, kids activities, training. But it was also good to kind of get them involved in the sport to some extent, whether it be running a little bit or, as I said, my daughter doing triathlons.
Isn't San Diego like the heart of triathlons? Like that's where it all started, right?
Yeah, that's where it started. And probably if we didn't live in San Diego for that time, I probably wouldn't have started. Did running. Started with, I had a friend did a half marathon. And I was kind of like, if he could do it, I could do it. So I did that. And that time I was living in Arizona. We moved to San Diego, found a morning running group, and in San Diego, everybody does triathlon. It's not a question of, what race have you completed? It's how many times have you gone to Kona? So it's pretty humbling. So that's humbling. Good thing is there's a lot of people get a lot of input from, experience from. There's a lot of pros and really experienced people there. So, I mean, some of my first experiences in triathlon were Julie Moss telling me I should go swim at the Oceanside Pier. I got to ride with Sebastian Keela. I was with Sebastian Keela for like all of 5 minutes.
Sweet.
My daughter got to train with Scott Tinley. We had training sessions with Luke McKenzie and oh my gosh, I can't remember her name. The Olympic triathlon winner from Australia, blonde. It'll come to me at some point. It's not Brenda Carfrey. Heather Jackson is readily available there. Got to ride and hang out with Rachel Joyce. I actually have Rachel Joyce's second place Kona finish a kit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Tell me the story behind that.
So I have a friend who's doing triathlon for women, and she had an auction. And so I was like, hey, I wouldn't mind winning Rachel Joyce's kit since I met her, and maybe my daughter can wear it, inspire her to get in the triathlon. And sure enough, she did wear it. And now it's hanging on my wall downstairs.
That's really cool. So I'm very interested in some of the tips and tricks that you have with managing, a demanding job, family, and triathlons. And I think we'll get into that. But you kind of mentioned a little bit about how you got into triathlons. But since we're kind of focusing on the first half Ironman, can you just tell me when was your first half Ironman, and what do you remember about that experience?
So I was supposed to do Soma, which is a race in Arizona. It's now currently the my battery's died.
Okay.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're there.
What's that background? There's something else going on. There we go. All right? We still there?
Yep. Yeah, I got you.
All right. So it was supposed to be Soma, which is the current Ironman 70.3. It was before Ironman bought that race out. But the dam for Tempe Town Lake burst. And so the swim answer was going to basically be a bike and run. And for me, and I'm sure just like with probably a lot of the athletes you're working with, the swim was a big deal. I didn't know how to swim when I started. I was lucky I could swim 25 yards. And so I was like, look, I worked my butt off to learn how to swim. I don't want to go do a bike run. I want to do a swim. Mm-hmm. So luckily, since it was an Ironman, knowing they were giving refunds. And so I got a refund and did a race called Pumpkin Man, which is a brutal bike course. The last 5 miles have like a 1,500 foot climb.
Oh, wow.
Now, there was never a race I ever entered that I felt that I'm not going to finish this race. But Pumpkin Man, I was really concerned that I would not finish the race. Because when I started, I was a runner. The best I could do swimming was 25 yards, the best. Biking, just gotten a bike like the year I started, and I hadn't ridden a bike for 10 years before that. So I was pretty nervous about Pumpkin Man. And like I said, I never was in fear of not finishing a race, but Pumpkin Man, there was definitely a fear for it. But I got a plan from online, so I didn't have a coach for the first one. Got a plan and just kind of stuck to the plan day in, day out, every day, just really disciplined about sticking to the plan. The thing I learned probably from that first race was the most important thing is consistency. You're going to have days that you're going to be tired and not going to want to work out. You're going to have days that you don't want to go to the pool. You don't want to get on your bike. You're going to be tired, but you just got to be consistent. And I found that the trick I've learned was that try it for the first 15 minutes. If after 15 minutes you still don't want to do it, maybe you're having an off day, listen to your body. But most of the time after that first 15 minutes, you're into your workout and you're fine.
I 100% agree with that. That is like exactly the same type of mind trick that I try and do on myself. It's like, oh, I really don't want to do an hour run or a 2-hour bike. It's like, all right, well, let's just get 15 minutes or 20 minutes in, and then we'll decide if we're going to quit. And usually by that time, you feel a lot better, right? And then you just keep going.
Yep.
So that's really cool. And that's some really good advice. Is there anything, you kind of coming back to that Pumpkin Man, you said that was one of the times where you weren't sure if you could make it through. What got you through that race, and even what gets you through those hard moments when you're in a half Ironman or an Ironman?
So let me touch on one thing before we get to that, because I'm sure a lot of the folks you're working with are new to swimming.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal for me. And I got a swim coach. And if you ever worked with a swim coach and you're not familiar with swimming, it's incredibly frustrating. The guys on the deck yelling at you, do zipper, kick, pull, high elbow. And if you don't know the swimming lingo, you have no clue what the guy is talking about. And I ended up going with my daughter to swim lessons with her. So the same person that was teaching her to swim was teaching me to swim. And when you have a kid instructor to someone who doesn't know how to swim, they're used to getting in the water with you. They're used to putting their hands on you. They're used to teaching you how to move your arms and how to move your feet. And literally this woman would just take me and she would move my feet up and down to kick. She would lift my elbow up out of the water. So I learned how to move my arms. So that to me, I felt really got me to learn how to swim. And then after a while, you get intimidated with, can I swim 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 or 1.2 miles? And most people stop after like 50 yards or 100. And at one point I just mentally said, I'm going to pool that is 3 feet deep and I'm 5'8". The worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to stand up. And so I just mentally just said, I'm not stopping till I do 1,000 yards and got through it. So that's the swim. So then back to Pumpkin Man, what got me through it? Again, my running is my strength. And so my thought process the whole time, so I was really scared about the swim. It's an open swim, was a mass start. Had my wetsuit on, got in the water and just kind of went with it. Just said, everybody else is here. We're all in the same boat. We're all just going to go through it. I kind of hung back towards the back of the pack until I got comfortable in the water. And then as I got comfortable, I just started getting into my rhythm and my stroke and my race. And then I got through the swim. Before you knew it, 35 minutes later, swim was over. On the bike, it was, like I said, this was a brutal bike. And my whole thought was, I just have to get through the bike because once I hit the run, I will do well. And so I just kept going on the bike. And I think what you see in triathlon is there's this vision that triathletes are these super fit athletes. And when you show up at a triathlon, you start to see there are all shapes and sizes of people. And so after a while, you're kind of like, wow, if all these other people can be here and do this, there's no reason that I can't do this. And so I just kept pedaling 1 mile at a time. Eventually it became 10 miles at a time to tick off the miles. And before you know it, you're at mile 50. And at this point, I'm like, okay, now I just got these 5 miles uphill. And it was one switchback at a time on the bike, just going uphill. And then you're there. So it's just kind of taking small chunks at a time, getting through it. The bad thing is, though, is that in every race, something's going to go wrong. And on the first race, it was no different. Again, like I said, I'm a strong runner. And what you learn is that, okay, you do a really hard bike, you got no running legs. Getting to the run, I'm 3 miles in, I'm feeling great. And then I just hit a wall. And it was a battle just to finish. I mean, 3 miles and I got 10 miles to go. It was a battle just to finish. And it was, again, just small pieces at a time. Just I would run 10 minutes, walk 2 minutes, run 10 minutes, walk 2 minutes. And I was definitely not running at the pace I was normally accustomed to. It was a very slow pace. And the time just goes by. Before you know it, you're done. And then on this race, since it wasn't an Ironman, my kids were able to finish with me. So I got kids, they cheered me on and ran me into the finish line. But it was taking the whole race, small chunks at a time, having my race being comfortable in what I could do, not what other people were going to do. And then getting it done.
That's so good. I think there's so many good pieces of advice that you're just throwing out there as you're telling these stories of kind of breaking things down, not thinking about the 50 miles. It's like taking 5 miles at a time, staying focused on yourself and your own kind of effort and work, and not being worried about, oh, I normally run, a 9-minute mile or a 8-minute mile or whatever that is for you, because whatever you can do on race day is like what you're gonna, show up and do. And I think those are just really good pieces of advice. And that's just a cool story about finishing with your kids. So what are you more proud of, being a Pumpkin Man or an Ironman?
Being an ultra marathon finisher, but being an Ironman finisher.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So, that's just your first race, right? And that was what, maybe 10 years ago?
10 years ago.
Okay. So now give me an idea for you mentioned it, in Facebook, but give me an idea for what all you have accomplished in the past 10 years.
So in the last 10 years, I've done 15 fulls, 10 halves, and probably about a half dozen Olympics. So I've hit legacy. So just a lot of racing. I've done a couple ultra marathons, gone up to 100 kilometers running. So it just, the whole triathlon experience changes your lifestyle. Training no longer is training for a race. It's now, that's just what I do. Every weekend there will be some swim, bike, or run activity, because that's just my lifestyle now.
I love that. So, if you were to take all of that, everything that you've learned from the 15 fulls, the 10 halves, the ultra marathons, and try and start to break it down for somebody who's trying to finish their first half Ironman. You mentioned a little bit of advice with the swim, with getting your form, critiqued and working with a swim coach. But if you focus just on the swim, what other pieces of advice would you have for somebody who's trying to complete their first half Ironman?
For just the swim?
For just the swim, yeah, we'll go through each of them.
Okay. So everybody is nervous about the swim. Most of us don't come from a swim background. So it's just kind of, just get in and do it and get it done with. I have always had the mental approach, since the swim is my least comfortable sport, that the race doesn't start till the swim is over. So I just kind of go do the swim, get it done. That first race, obviously I hung back to give myself some comfort. As I've progressed and I've gotten more comfortable in crowds, I'll now find somebody's feet who are a little faster than me and just kind of hang on their feet as best as I can. Also try to, as you're swimming, practice lifting your head out of the water in the pool to spot. Spotting, you really don't, ideally you spot every third stroke, and not hang with people. Don't trust the person that's next to you that they know the right route, because the reality is, if you could spot 2 or 3 buoys ahead, you will swim straighter than going buoy to buoy. There was one race I did, Ironman, where I had just an atrocious swim and I couldn't figure out why, because I had done it twice before. And I looked at my Garmin and it was all squiggly. And I went back and looked at the course after I picked up my bike, and all the buoys were like in this snake-like line. It's like, well, yeah, okay, you swam buoy to buoy and the buoys were not aligned. So I would have sighted just a little bit further. I wouldn't have had that problem. I would have had a more straight swim and a quicker swim.
Yeah.
And then also learning that course on the swim, it's not, it's not straight. The course at Ironman Arizona and also Half Iron Arizona, the swim, it's got a curve to it. It curves to the left as you go through it. And so the best point to start for the swim is not up against the buoy, but towards the middle of the course, and then swim straight towards that last buoy. Mm-hmm. And that's a straight line of sight. So I guess there's a bunch of stuff there for a beginner. It's swim your race, be comfortable where you are in the pack. If you I've never had to flip over or stop, but if you have to stop, take a breath, get your bearings around you. If you're more an experienced swimmer and you're swimming for time, try and find that person who's a little faster than you and just stay on their heels. It's the one part of the race where you can legally draft. So certainly take advantage of that. Your wetsuit is a flotation device. So if you are comfortable wearing a wetsuit and it's not claustrophobic, take advantage of that extra flotation that it gives you. Mm-hmm. I think when you wear a wetsuit, what you'll find is if you kick a lot, you're going to start kicking out of the water, which is just a waste of energy. So try and minimize your kick, more to just keep your body floating properly and oriented properly, as opposed to propulsion like you would in a pool.
That's really good. Now, what about for the bike?
The bike, you have to have your nutrition down. That's what the bike is all about. That's where you're getting your fueling in. I would often wait. So you've been horizontal for an hour plus. on the swim. I'm sorry, now, so a half hour plus on the swim. Your ability to go digest and ingest food after that is going to be nil. Your body is like, whoa, wait, what's going on? Don't start feeding us food. So give yourself a little bit of time before you start taking food in on the bike, usually about 15 minutes for a half. I usually half an hour at a full, but liquids are fine. Start taking liquids in. But the bike is all about nutrition. It's just getting your nutrition down, getting your nutrition in, and take the time to make sure that you're getting that nutrition, even if you have to stop. If you neglect your nutrition because you don't want to stop and you're saving 20 seconds, that will bite you on the run and you will give it all back in spades. So, the fourth discipline of triathlon is nutrition. You have to get that done. Even if it means stopping. Find food that you're going to eat and you're going to like. You're out there on a half. For me, it's usually about 2.5 to 3 hours on a half on a bike. So you're out there riding, find stuff you're going to like. If it's warm, again, food you like, because as it gets warmer, you are less likely to want to eat. When I started, I was on solid food nutrition. So I would have the goos and the gels and all that, and your body gets sick of that. You can't take too much of that in. So if you could practice with some other foods, a lot of people use potatoes with salt. That helps. I've now moved to 100% liquid nutrition, where I have a mix of synthetic carbohydrate and a salt, and I mix that together with an amino acid. So that's my concoction for race day. But leading up to that, practice nutrition like it's race day, dial in how many calories you need an hour, and just get comfortable with it and get comfortable with eating what you're going to eat on the course.
That's really good, because a lot of the athletes that I've been talking to, they are curious about nutrition and how do they figure out, what their nutrition strategy should be. So you gave a little bit of advice there, but could you go into a little bit more detail of how somebody can, build the right nutrition strategy for a half Ironman?
So it's a lot of trial and error. There are websites that'll tell you how many calories you need for your body weight. So try that, see how you feel, see if you feel bloated or if you're still hungry. That's how I basically looked on a website and said, okay, here's how much I weigh. I should have this many calories. It told me I think 300 calories an hour. That did not work for me. I was very bloated, felt very heavy. So I've dialed that back down where I'm at 250 calories an hour. And then it's, again, trying different foods. I started trying the goos and the gels. That's what I was familiar with from running. And I got, again, bloated from that. I've never really gotten sick, luckily.
Mm-hmm.
But I started dialing that in. I'm like, all right, I can't eat goos and gels all day. Let's try some other things. So I would try candy bars that didn't melt. I would try chips. I would then just ask people, what do you use? Other people used like Hammer Nutrition, Gatorade Nutrition. I use something called Vitargo S2 as a carbohydrate, and I blend that with Gatorade for sodium and potassium. And like I said, I add an amino acid to it. So a lot of it is just trial and error. And again, trying it in your training. That's what your training's for, is to understand what you can and cannot intake and how your body responds to that food. And also keep in mind, you're getting off the bike, you have to run. So it's also important to try the food and run with that food having been ingested, because otherwise you may have slosh belly where it's just kind of sitting in your stomach and sloshing around, or you may not have enough food and you're going to crash on the run. So try and feel what that feels like in terms of that nutrition.
That's really good. It seems like nutrition is very personal. For each person has something that works for them. For me, I use Uncrustables. So little peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I use gels. I sometimes do salt tabs. I mix Gatorade with water. And just like you, I've just figured that out and experimented with it over time. And that's kind of what works for me. So besides really focusing on the nutrition, is there any other bike advice that you would have for a first time half Ironman?
So learn how to ride your bike. it sounds kind of silly, but a lot of people ride with Zwift right now and Racer, Road, and Rovi, but you got to learn your handling skills, learn how to turn. The biggest gain is learning how to be comfortable going downhill in aero and speed. But I did Ironman Lake Placid. So again, I'm training in San Diego. Doesn't rain in San Diego. We hit Ironman Lake Placid. It rains and we're on the keen descent where you can easily get up to 50 miles an hour. You just have to get comfortable that I can go downhill. I can go downhill fast and I'm not going to lose control of my bike. And that's where you can gain a lot of time in your race. If you're braking, if you're tense, if you're nervous going down that hill, you're going to expend a lot of energy trying to manage your bike. You're going to be out of aero position. So it's just get comfortable on your bike. It's your friend. It's where you're going to be eating. Learn how to ride with one hand so you can grab water bottles from the aid stations without having to stop. It's ride your bike, get comfortable with it. Practice with a spouse or a friend grabbing water bottles while you're riding. Practice eating while you're on your bike. Practice going down steep hills. Practice making turns. Soma, which I eventually did, that race in Arizona, has I think it's 26 turns. So if you're not comfortable taking a turn, speeding up, coming out of the turn, you're going to lose a lot of time and spend a lot of energy and power having to get back up to speed as you're coming out of that turn. So your bike is your friend. Get comfortable on it. Love it.
Perfect. Okay, let's move to the run. What advice do you have on running, finishing that half Ironman?
So when you get off your bike, you're going to feel like your legs aren't there. For me, I get off the bike and I could run way faster than I need to run. And it's very difficult to control that. So what I learned to do, my first Ironman was survival. So I didn't have that problem. It was get off the bike and okay, now let's run. And I didn't have the problem of running too fast because it was survival. My first Ironman, I got off the bike and my legs felt just fantastic, which you want to preserve that. And so I looked around and looked for someone who was much slower than me and ran with them for the first 2 miles. And so I ran with this guy who was in a tutu, so wasn't taking the race, all that. And we ran for 2 miles at a 10-minute mile pace, which is way slower than what I would normally run. And then once I got, my legs felt normal, they didn't feel that lightness that they weren't even there. I then thanked him, said, I'll see you later, have a good race, and went and did my run. One time I forgot that, and on Ironman Arizona, I came off a transition and I started running. I was running fast, and I'm a runner, so I don't expect any people to pass me. And this woman passed me. It's like, oh, I'm going to go start running with her. And so we're running along, and I'm like, man, we're moving really fast. And I looked down at her calf, and it says P, and I'm like, holy crap. And I look at my watch, and we were doing 6:20s. She's on the second for Ironman when I'm on the first loop. So 6:20s for me in the first 3 miles was not a good move.
Oh my gosh, that's good. So it kind of the advice there is use the other athletes who are running to help you, kind of get adjusted, right? And
Yep.
so maybe earlier in the race, you can go with somebody who's a little bit slower, keep up with them and then run your race. Any
Yep.
other pieces of advice on the run?
Actually, a lot more pieces of advice. So the run is where things are going to start going dark. That's where you're going to have the spot. Usually on a half, it's at mile 10, just like a half marathon. Why am I doing this? This is stupid. Can I finish? So always try and have positive thoughts. Find your why. You're doing this because you want to set an example for your kids. You're doing this because it's who you are. It's your personality, one step at a time. But find your positive thoughts, find your why, because guaranteed at some point in the race, you will have a dark spot. And that's for everybody, whether it's Jan Frodeno or the slowest person out there. Everybody will have a dark spot. The other thing is have your backup strategy. When you have days where things are going to go south, and there will be some days where you just don't have it, have a strategy of how you're going to work through that. When I did, so that Ironman Arizona 5 times, The fourth time I got off the bike, I didn't have that lightness feel in my legs, a very heavy feel in my legs. And I couldn't even run to T2. My legs were just toast. I didn't have it that day. And so I said, all right, let's run the first couple of miles, see how you're feeling. Did that, didn't recover. And I said, okay, we're going to do a 10-minute run, a 2-minute walk, and see how that works. Was not working well. Okay, I do 5-minute run, 2-minute walk. And I eventually had to crank it down to a 3-minute run, 1-minute walk before I could get comfortable and maintain a constant pace. You really want to avoid the walk of death, where you're just walking without any mindfulness or goal in mind. Always have a goal when you get to that dark spot and you have to walk. Don't get into the, all right, I'm going to walk now, because you will lose track of time and you'll just walk, and you will lose sight of the fact that you're walking and you really don't need to.
That's really good. Kind of planning for the worst case scenario, right?
Yep.
And having that backup plan. And like you mentioned, like finding your why and, having those positive thoughts. I'm a big believer in the mindset, and really in how the real benefit of triathlons, it's not just about the race, it's all about the person that you become along the way. And, I would just be curious if there's any other ways or advice that you could have for first time triathletes or first time half Ironman to find their why or find their purpose for training for a half Ironman.
I think you got to really be honest with yourself as to why you're doing this. And there's no shame in any kind of why. Some people want their why because they want that medal. Some people want the why because they want to appease their ego and say, I'm an Ironman. Some people do it for role model kids, but every why is personal. There's no shame or glory in any why. It's your why. My why, it's just flat out, it's who I am. I'm a program manager, and in program management, every program, something will go wrong, and it's how you respond to that thing that goes wrong and work through it that makes you successful as a program manager or not. And that's just who I am. So when I'm out there and I'm having my dark spots, it's like, this is who you are. Just figure it out, work through it, and we'll get it done. So
that's really good. That's perfect. So we've talked about nutrition, swimming, biking, running, and something that you mentioned to be able to do the number of races that you have and to have such a demanding job and have a family. I bet you're pretty good with time management. So talk to me about what's some time management advice that you have? And also kind of talk to me about how to balance training with life.
So for me, I'm a morning person. So I try to get my workouts done in the morning. So this morning I swam for an hour, ran for a half hour. So up at 4:30, getting that done before workday starts. So now this evening, I really don't have a workout. I may go lift weights just as an extra to make sure I'm fit and healthy, because my season hasn't yet started. But find out, are you a morning person, an evening person, and plan your workouts around that. Have your workouts planned. Don't kind of go into the day, oh, I think I'm going to go do this, or I may go run, or I may go bike. Have it, but there's got to be a plan. If you use a coach for that, great. If you use an online program, great. If you do it yourself, great. But you've got to have that plan. And it's probably best not to set the plan the day before for what you're going to do. Prepare your stuff the night before. If you're going to go swim in the morning, have your stuff for your swim ready to go, so that all you have to do is get out of bed and go swim. Same thing with running, bike. Whatever you're going to do, have everything ready to go the night before. For kids' activities, as parents, we always like to watch our kids. If we're going to miss a moment, you know what? Your kid is not going to know if you're running laps around the soccer field, or if you're riding your bike in the parking lot, or watching them doing their gymnastics. I mean, my bike has seen the inside of hockey rinks. It has seen the inside of gymnastics. It has seen soccer fields. I just bring my trainer, set it up, get on my bike, and watch my kid do what they're going to do. Sometimes they get a little embarrassed because their dad is the weirdo on the bike. But
that's brilliant.
That's what I do. The trainer has gone everywhere with me. I think that's it. And then sometimes you have a bad workout, and if you're having a bad workout, that's okay. Do what you can. And sometimes you got to stop, maybe come back and visit it later. There are many times I would go for a run in the morning and I'm just like, it's not there. It's not happening. I do my 15 minutes. It's still not happening. So I would stop, go take care of other stuff. And then do it at night when everybody was done with their schoolwork, whatever they had to get done. And I just hop on the bike or go for a run. And the other thing I always say is nobody gets up early to watch TV or be on Facebook. So that's why I always work out in the morning, because you're getting up early to do something. As we're in the evening, plenty of people sit in front of TV, watch their TV shows or play on their computer because they're unwinding. So I found the mornings are just best because you get up with a mission and intent of mind and purpose. As we're in the evening, you start to drift off.
That's perfect. That's the exact advice that I give. But that idea of bringing your trainer to your kids' activities, I think that is brilliant, and I feel like that is gold right there. So we've talked about a lot of things, and now I kind of want to focus in on race day and kind of 2 days before, the day before, the morning of. There's a lot of nerves and excitement around, what is that race day experience like? So if you focus in again on somebody who's doing their first half Ironman, what's that race day advice that you would provide?
So my first half Ironman, my race day morning was a disaster, total disaster. I had a friend who gave me some deep rim wheels to try, which I'd never tried before. And so the night before, I'm trying to get him on my bike and I couldn't figure it out for some reason. I still don't know why. Next day it was fine, no problem. But that night I was not able to get those race wheels on. So clearly don't do something new because you're going to be stressed and tensed. Alert your spouse ahead of time. You will be stressed and tense. So when you bite their head off, they understand why. Your kids will find race evening to be the first time they're going to act out on everything. When I did the New York City Marathon, my son decided that he was not going to do his schoolwork that night and got in a big argument with me. When I did Boston Marathon, my daughter decided she was going to have a temper tantrum. If you can get away from your kids, because they want your attention and you're focused on something else. So try and manage that. When things have gone well on a race day, I have had all my stuff together and ready to go. So as I've done enough of these, I have extra Ironman bags. And on a half, you don't get the bags, I don't think. I think the bags are the full.
Yep.
So
the full.
So in that case, just get some grocery bags and have all your stuff laid out before you even pack to travel. Put it all in your suitcase as if it was for the race. So have your swim stuff in one bag, have your run stuff as if you were going to have it in transition in another bag, have your bike stuff again as if you're going to have it in transition in a third bag. And that's how you pack for your travel. So if you're driving or flying to the race, pack your suitcase like that. That way you get there, everything is set up. Before you leave, set up your nutrition. So again, if you're going to have goos during the run, have those in your run bag. Same with your bike. So everything is all set up and segregated and ready to go before you even get to the race. And then when you get there, if you want to prep your bike beforehand, you know exactly where your food is. So you go into that run bag, you pull out your food and you tape it on or strap it on or however you're going to carry it on your bike. Same thing with your run. So just try and prep everything you can before you leave to go to the race venue into segregated bags. Even set aside if you're doing mixtures of drinks, I will pre-measure those in baggies before I go and stuff them in the water bottle so that when I get to the race venue, just got to empty the contents in the water bottle, fill it up with water, and I'm good to go. So just as much prep as you can beforehand for what you're going to need race day. If you can't do that and everything is in a suitcase, lay it all out on the floor and set it all up as you're going to need it. Set up your swim stuff in one area, your bike stuff in another area, and your run stuff in another area, so you can see it all, get it all segregated, and get it all taken care of. If you're going to try gator skin tires and get new tires or fresh tires, do those before you get to the race, so that you're not fighting getting a tire onto a wheel the night before the race. I'm trying to think in terms of prep. I think that's probably the most stuff in prep. Keep in mind race day, guaranteed something will go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Just expect it, take it in stride. Just about every race I've done, something's gone wrong. I did Ironman Arizona. I got into T2. I went to go put on my running socks. I didn't have any. So here I am about to run a marathon with no socks. And I just calmly said, wait a minute, it's Arizona. I know at least 100 people on this course. There is someone who will give me their socks. Sure enough, a mile in, I saw a friend. Hey, can I borrow your socks? No problem.
Oh my gosh.
The Ironman community is awesome, and people will definitely do that. We did Ironman Santa Rosa, and this girl, as we're about to get into the swim, her goggles snapped. Her first Ironman, she's freaking out. I'm like, what's the problem? Just tie a knot in it, put them on, you're good to go. And so we just tied her. She was good to go. So something will go wrong. Just roll with it. The only thing that's going to stop you is if your bike breaks. That's the only thing it'll have to break hard. I've had the cage on my, not the rear derailleur, the cage on my pulleys break, but the pulley's still intact. So I basically rode the whole race without a pulley cage. I did have one race where I drove my derailleur into my rear wheel so badly that it took it out of true, and it kept hitting the brakes. I was done. At that point, I was like, okay, I had a good swim. It was a good race. Sorry, it's not my day.
Mm-hmm.
So things will go wrong. Hopefully it's not a bike mechanical that takes you out of the race. Outside of a bike mechanical that takes you out of the race, everything else is manageable. 4 years ago, Jan Ferdinand did Ironman Lanzarote. This is on YouTube video. You can go watch it. He got out of the swim. He went to go put on his bike helmet, and the visor on his helmet, he couldn't get it attached. He spent 3 minutes in transition trying to get his bike visor attached. This is like the Ironman world champion, the greatest Ironman that we've seen. And even he had something go wrong, and he just kind of eventually just got it done, rolled with it, and he won.
Yeah, that's great. Just being prepared for something going wrong, helps you deal with it when it actually does happen. Right. Yep. So it's anticipating that. So I think that's really good. So just a few more questions. This has been super helpful so far. So just kind of want you to finish this sentence. So if you were talking to somebody who's about to complete or train for their first half Ironman, and you were to say, first timer, don't worry about blank, what would you say?
Don't worry about the swim. You've trained for it. You've got it done. You will get the swim done. You'll get out. You'll have fun.
Okay, perfect. And first timer, stay focused on blank.
Oh, that's easy. Come on, stay focused on the now. It's a long day. A half Ironman is also a long day. So it's focus on the now and what's in front of you. Focus on the swim, each stroke at a time, each kick at a time, each buoy. If you need to, count the buoys, and before you know it, you'll be done. The bike, focus on your pedal strokes. Focus on being an arrow. Focus on the person in front of you. Focus on those markers on the side of the road that count off the miles. And again, before you know it, you're at 10 miles, 20, and then you're done. Same thing with the run. Focus on the here and now. If you find yourself in bad spots, always focus on your form. It just kind of takes you out of that mental darkness. Focus on how you're stroking your pedals when you're in a mental dark spot. Focus on your run cadence, your run stride. Just things to kind of get you back into the now as you're going through.
That's really good. So anything else that you would like to mention, or anything else that you would just like to say to a first time half Ironman?
Have fun. When you cross the finish line, don't look at your watch. Just stop, smile for the camera. The watch will be there. It'll have the time. Make sure you capture that picture of you finishing. Enjoy the whole day. If you have trained appropriately, you'll know, and you will finish. You'll finish where you need to finish, and just have fun with it. It's a fantastic sport, and it's a fantastic community. You're going to be in probably the best shape of your life when you're done, and if you continue, you'll only get in better shape. So it's the only sport where you're on the same course as the professionals, and they're super friendly, super nice, as is everybody out there.
That's really cool. Well, thank you so much, Bruce. I feel like this was extremely helpful for first time half Ironman triathletes, but also for me. I'm like just learning from you. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's so great. So thank you so much.
No problem. And if any of the athletes want to reach out to me, like I